Just very briefly, my name's Dennis Bonilla. I'll be running the slides. I'm the co-lead on this initiative with Kavya Perlman. I'm an advisor for XRSI and was fortunate enough to get involved with the kind of development of the beginning of the framework. I was much like you all on the call. I was interested in privacy and XR. My background, I spent 12 and a half years at NASA developing data visualization and simulation systems, and just wanted to be able to support what I thought was a really positive initiative. So we're probably similar types of folks. I just wanted to preface that my involvement really is to kind of further the mission of XRSI and really help Kavya and the rest of the team with this framework specifically. So let's get started. We're going to kick off essentially what will be version 1.1 of this framework. And so for this kickoff, it'll be pretty quick, pretty straightforward. What we'd like to do is do a project description, like what the heck are we talking about? What is this? What's the purpose? What is the framework itself and how is it structured? That kind of thing. How have we defined the different function areas? What is a function area? Also the project development timeline. How quickly do we intend to get things done? What is the purpose of getting them done and what are we doing afterward? A few logistics and contact information slides, just so you know who to reach out to, how to inform us that you're interested in being a part of this, and just generally making sure that we have a cohesive team that we know is responsible for different sections of this version of the update. And then we'll end it just with a Q&A in case there were things that we missed or things that we should know. And so let's keep going. So what we're looking to do with this particular project is to receive input for the privacy and safety framework. It has gone through an initial iteration where the public and industry was allowed to contribute to the framework itself. And I'll be describing what that framework contains in a second here. And so what we'd like to do for version 1.1, this update that we're doing this quarter, is to formalize it further and really to be able to share this, and I'll explain a little bit, to get your inputs to then be able to give it and formalize it with federal agencies and other countries. And that's the importance of this framework. There's quite a bit of work to be done. We didn't think that we could do it alone. We wanted to be sure that we got inputs from everyone that needed to look at it. And I'm sure we're going to miss some people. There are probably people that you want to tell about this particular framework after this presentation. And so that's what this meeting is for. So really the goal of this framework is to kind of get ahead of what is potentially what could potentially be a series of security problems within the XR domain. And so what we want to be able to do is inform, manage, prevent, and assess. And all of those things really are how we have structured the framework in the beginning. Those are the 4 major focus areas. Each focus area has 14 corresponding functions. And so I'll show you what those look like. So here's assess, inform, manage, and prevent, right? Assessment and mapping, risk assessment, context, choice, control, child safety. So there are subject matter experts on this call that will probably want to tackle one particular area. And so what we don't expect is for everyone to go through every single page and every single function of this framework. That would be far too big and would take way too long. Instead, what we're thinking is that there are probably areas that you're interested in. There will probably be function leads or team leads that will help fill out and inform and update these different function areas with the goal of really being done with these inputs by the end of the first quarter of this year. So by March 31st, we really want to be able to take in those inputs. And then from there, we'll ratify them into the document, lay out the document so that it's easy to read, or it's a bit more legible than just the spreadsheets and the Excel documents that we have, and then we will pass them on to the pertinent government entities. So the framework itself, like I said, has 4 focus areas. There are 14 functions, which you just saw. Within those 14 functions are 125 controls, and that just means that there are basically sub concerns or sub callouts for each of those functions. So although we have kind of these monolithic 14 areas, we're able to drill down to get a lot of specificity within each of the 14 areas. That granularity really is allowing us to reach out to different universities and different organizations and have them tackle and think about the particular function that may be of interest to them or that they have been able to create solutions for or thought about. These controls specifically, they define potential problems and provide solutions. The hope here is that this produces a collective model to understand our shared responsibility for privacy. First and foremost, the most important thing about this document is that we are assessing risk and providing solutions, specifically within the XR domain. So I would like to switch over really quickly. If you could all go to menti.com, and here's the code that I want you to plug in. And this is just a really quick survey. With that super quick overview, what we're going to do is we're going to look at whether we should be developing this framework separately for VR and AR or collectively as XR. So that's the first input we'd love to hear back from you all. Unfortunately, we get some real-time feedback with this particular page. I'm going to switch back real quick so that you all can see the code. So menti.com 778168.3. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of problem understanding the question. It's one or A or B question, but it's responding with yes or no.
Oh, that's a good that's a good call out. That's a good. We should have put AR, VR, and XR. Kavya, a little bit of insight into this one.
Yeah, I know. So we can talk to it later on.
Great catch. Great catch.
So yes for separating it as AR, VR, and not separating it, keeping it just one entity as XR. So
so yes is to separate. Yeah. No is to deal with it more monolithically.
Can you go back and change your answers then?
Yeah,
it looks like
me off too.
Sorry about that.
Can you reboot? Can you redo the make a new code or something with the link or refresh?
Yeah. I think Dennis, you can even change the live answer question if you wanted. But yeah, I think if you wanted to reset, you could reset present and take a vote again.
If I may, there's one thing I do want to bring up about this in particular as a topic. With separating VR and AR for framework, you have to remember that the headsets and the actual display devices are merging. So the Oculus Quest itself, they're getting ready to make an AR dev kit. So realistically, we have to think whether we are going to be aiming at an application layer or a device layer, because the devices are merging together. So we're also going to have to worry about stuff like if you have 2 different versions of an app, one which works AR, one which works VR. So these are other considerations we have to bring into play.
Right.
Thanks for the input.
Peter.
Briefly, pardon me for interrupting. I apologize. My name is Dylan Rakiti. I work at Unity Labs. I'm an XR researcher over there. Have been in XR for more years than I should count. I second exactly what was stated there. I'm working directly with FRL and a number of other organizations with my research, and there will be no separation. Cross XR situations that VR Vana presented upon the Apple acquisition are coming to every single platform. in not too much time. So if you break this up, you're going to have to perform a reintegration at some point. And the concerns will be shared because a single device will go in between semi-occluded transparent AR and opaque VR within the exact same session. So just a heads up.
Thanks for the
And
insight,
this is
Dylan.
Paul McLaughlin from Ericsson, and we also think that at a network level, where we're thinking a lot of these security and privacy topics as well, that there will be a lot of similarity between AR and VR, particularly as we think about spatial computing or pushing compute into the network as well.
And would like to add something too. This is Tawfiq from Qualcomm. So looking a bit at the future, we're very much going to see, wireless AR viewer tethered to smartphones. So most of the application will actually be running off a smartphone. So that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
I
I would add to that the W3C originally developed the Web VR spec, which is now deprecated in favor of the Web XR spec, and they're going to be adding a Web AR module to it. So the device API specification merging as XR, following their lead, I think is the way to go.
This is a biggie, and I think that if there are any items within the framework that could be specific to one or the other, they could just be tagged. I don't think there's any need for separation, irrespective of whether the technologies are merging or not. If there's any specific item that might apply only to AR or AR hardware or anything like that, that could still fall under XR, and it could be tagged accordingly within the framework.
Daniel Lindenberger here, and I agree. One thing that we might want to tag on would be more based off functional components such as eye tracking, which might be both in AR and VR. So as long as there's a tag system, that'll make it easy for people to kind of drill down to the appropriate sets.
I'd like to point out that John said something interesting in the comments as well, and that we need to handle BCI and what was the other one? Full body and haptics.
And haptics. Yeah, this is John with Avatar Medic. So, what we care about a lot is transferring sensation. So when we think about XR, we're thinking about BC, not just eye tracking, right? But actual BCI. So that's EEG measurements, that's other measurements, but then haptics as well. And it's all going to be in one framework. And I agree with the other comments that, the devices are going to merge. So I think like keeping it all as one and then tagging it, but we really need to think about this very holistically, because pretty soon it's all gonna be one big soup.
Yeah. What I find really interesting is that we are the face that we are stuck with.
We really appreciate the insight from everyone. That's exactly the type of collaborative input that we're looking for. And we appreciate your time. I wanted to actually say that as well. So we'll hop back over into the kickoff presentation. Thank you all for the votes and for the insight. Like I said, super, super appreciate it. So as I was explaining previously, what we intend to do is having the kickoff lead into an effort which will be divided up into 1 week sprints. The idea here is to really kind of keep momentum going. What we found with the initial framework really is that you can have kind of this like really hot period where everybody's really interested, and then it kind of cools off, and you get this core set of core set of people that are really interested in contributing. And then maybe later on in the project, some people want to just review and make sure that everything's kind of been captured in a way that is reflective to their goals. So what we want to be able to do is do these 1 week sprints. We will likely have, the plan is to have 2 stand-up meetings each week with a working session each week. And so we don't want to take up, we know we're all busy people. We don't want to take up an extraordinary amount of your time. We know that you may be divvying up some of the responsibilities within teams in your organizations. So again, 1 week sprints, 2 stand-ups, just to kind of to understand where we are in the process each week, and then 1 working session. The idea here is to work our butts off basically until the 31st of March, at which point it'll be essentially pencils down. We will make sure on our side that we have captured as much as we possibly can from you all. We'll go through a content curation, make sure that it's legible, it makes sense, it's human readable, people will understand it. And then we'll take about 2 weeks to do that, kind of formalize that document so that we can get into editing in April. The idea there is to put it into, like I said, a legible document that we can hand off so that we can launch it in May and really go through an outreach and delivery initiative throughout May and July. The idea there is that we will be doing outreach to stakeholders, data protection agencies. We are already in contact with federal agencies here in the United States, Department of Justice, the FTC. The point is that we want to get this document to whomever needs to be informed by it. And right now, I think part of the problem with the security in XR, specifically in the XR domain, is that folks just don't realize that there are people like us thinking about these problems already and potential solutions. So I talked about this a bit. Each component reinforces how organizations achieve privacy goals through aligning business strategy, roles and responsibilities, and activities to prevent harm to humans in spatial computing and XR environments. Those focus areas, again, there are 4 of them. Each one of them contains these functions, these different functions, and then 125 controls within those different functions. There's a PDF and Excel sheet or a spreadsheet detailing the 125 controls. It looks something like this, and we will pass that information along to whomever wants to be a part of this project. Okay, so just to give you an example, this is how it's logically structured. The inform section may have a function area of child safety. Child safety are policies and procedures that must account for additional requirements and facilitate controls when processing or collecting data associated with minors. And so that is a function area. Within that, you've got these different controls. There's 7 here. Establish mechanisms to create awareness and inform parents, guardians regarding privacy risks to minors. Establish mechanisms to create and increase awareness among minors around privacy risks. These are the type of inputs that we would expect to see from you all. We're always open to modifications or insights that you may have. I thought that was a great, really quick discussion that we just had around breaking up AR, VR versus looking at it as one unit really that is going to be both types of interfaces and experiences. So although we've got these sections, if there's something glaring that we've missed, or if there's an input that you feel like needs to be captured that maybe there isn't a space for it, we're always open to that. That's what this project is about. We want to capture that insight. Okay, so one more time, we're going to go over to Menti, and you're going to have a second slide that we can add some stuff to. So this is just kind of a general feeling. After listening to the presentation, are you still committed to help with the development of this framework? Look at that.
No way.
Uh-oh. And like I said, thank you for the time. We super appreciate it. And we know that in the next 3 months, we're going to get all kinds of amazing input, given the amount of research that you all have done and the different organizations you represent. Great. So we got some feedback there. You can kind of see the general vibe. You know, if there are things that we can do better, we're always open to that as well. So if there was something in the presentation that didn't quite jive right or looks glaringly wrong, we're totally into hearing what that may be about. So we'll give you contact information so you can send us feedback. Great. So we'll switch back. It looks like we've got a generally positive.
Very democratic.
Generally positive feedback. So we'll go back here. So, right, we really want to engage as many folks as we can to get the inputs that we're looking for. We think that together we can build a privacy conscious community, inform others of privacy risks and mitigating solutions, create accountability, really demand transparency and share our collective knowledge within this privacy framework. This is, for us, a very significant step. We encourage you to join us, and if there are things that we could be doing better, we are, like I said, we're very much into hearing that input. Kavya, would you like to add to this particular slide?
Sure. So just like Dennis said, we are looking for individual contributors, absolutely. But at the same time, we are also extending official partnership to nonprofits, universities, governments, research labs, and think tanks. All of these folks will get to place, if you extend this partnership, place your logos on this particular framework that will go out to every government that we can possibly think of. Will take 3 months of time to make that outreach. For the for-profit, such as Qualcomm, we've engaged with them. We've engaged with several other, FRL included. If you want to be a supporter, you can reach out as well, but we are asking for $10,000 donation to be able to place your logo as only a supporter. If anybody from your organization contributes, they would still be attributed as an individual supporter. So you get the individual contribution regardless, but the only logos that we will add as the contributor are the think tanks, nonprofits, and research lab. And then we'll create a separate section, which is called the supporter. This is to create a buy-in across the globe, across the for-profit organization. So you can ask your marketing department to pay $10,000 to our effort, and then we would consider that as a supporter, but also highly encourage all your researchers and scientists to contribute to this thing, which is the most important part, not the money, but of course, it is also important that we make that clear distinction. So we'll provide the contact information in the next slides.
So here's who we are. This is our information. Initially, I think what we're looking at is, if you would like to reach out and provide feedback, each one of us is responsible for different parts of this. Really, the leads are Kavya and I. We will be in constant contact with you all, making sure we coordinate these meetings, making sure we provide you with the documents that you would need to put insight into, asking any questions that are relevant, having those conversations with you. Will and Maria are there as support for us. They are really being the PMs for the contributors and the outreach sections. If you'd like to write to us, I would say initially it's going to be all four of us so that we get that. I think we may iterate on this a bit. There may be a catch-all email that we put together in the next day or so, just so you guys have a single point that you can reach out to. Are there any questions?
Before we go to questions, Dennis, just wanted to actually provide an opportunity for everyone here, at least. I'm going to drop in the Excel sheet here. So within this Excel sheet, I dropped that in the chat. And then there is another document which I will provide afterwards. But if we could take maybe like 5 minutes to put in your email addresses, your input to that corresponding line item. Either you can put your email next to the focus area or the function or a particular control that you think. And you don't have to do it right away, but I encourage you to think about it, and as much as possible claim your spot. Within that spot, we also look for leaders that will lead that particular out of those 14 functions. If you want to be a lead for, let's say, assess and assessment, risk assessment, then go for it. So when we do have these particular meetings, we specifically invite you and you can lead the group. So no worries, Marco. Thank you for being here. And we'll send these recording as well as these documents afterwards. So let's just quickly jump into this document, and the tab, I think I can't. Let me, Dennis, if I could claim host from you, that's cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me share my screen real quick.
As an alternative, if you want, we can provide the Google form
Yeah, that could be one. It could be another thing. Where is?
Okay, so let me
where
prepare
is
it
the
right now.
master doc? Come on, I have the master copies here. So if you're seeing my screen, within this, you have a version 1.1 right here. Here you can go on and add your name and contributor name and email address. What this will do is we will give you access to these GDocs that are divided per function. And then within that, you have these subcontrols. So if you indicate your particular interest, for example, I would imagine Noble is interested in, and he's the person who helped us put together this choice context control sort of an analogy. So I would say Noble at, whatever your email is, you can add that. And then we will put all these meetings, organize everything right after, and then send you all the information, including the documents, including right access, as well as, whatever you need to do, recording as well. So let's just take just 3 more minutes. If anybody has any input right now, that's great. If not, you can always take your time afterwards and add to it.
Oh, comment. They may only have commenting permission at the moment.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
looks like it's only comment. Yeah, so I guess you can comment because this was Will's idea too. Because yeah, it would allow, if you could comment instead. Yeah, this was on purpose because there's a lot of anonymous chihuahuas. We didn't want that to happen.
There's an armadillo too, Kavya.
Right? There's an elephant.
We've got to be inclusive to all virtual animals.
Exactly. I'm seeing.
And
wow, I'm seeing
another thing, we are gonna add this document and the other resources in the framework page in xrsi.org. So you can also reach it over there if you didn't take notes here.
So this is just one document, and I'm going to switch over to another document. And, in the transition, you'll see we have been planning for this whole effort for a while. And so including outreach and everything, there is another document that we'll send out, which is the PDF accompanying document. The last time what happened is University of Michigan, Georgia Tech, they actually focused on the higher ed function. So if you believe as a university or as a think tank that there is a specific function that you want to focus on and submit that would be great too. So they basically provide the FERPA section in this. And the higher ed specific use cases. So that's also something that you can consider doing. Both of these documents will be made available. I believe I can share this doc as well in the chat. I believe that's the document.
So I had a quick question. Do we have anyone represented from the blockchain community within this work group?
We do. We have a very strong leader. His name is Oz Sultan. He leads a lot of different communities in the United States that are blockchain based. He has a massive group of blockchain interested users. He's not here today. He's been struggling with some medical issues, but yeah, I've made contact with him and he would definitely try to help. But any specific thing that you want to point out that we should take note of?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it would be an interesting idea to intersect the blockchain developers group into a spatial computing group, because many of the folks that I've been conversing with certainly see convergence between XR technology and blockchain technology, especially around privacy and protection.
Definitely. And I don't know if you guys noticed Twitter Jack had put out they're looking for decentralized or open source initiative. What we anticipate, and Kent Bai had pointed out that because of the incidents and events last week, there's going to be a larger emphasis on decentralized and open source stuff. So this is a really good call out. Another person for blockchain is our advisor, George. I forget the last name. Sorry, George, you're on the call.
Yes, I'm here.
There you go. So could you talk about your blockchain-based experience and the people that you're bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, my background is cybersecurity for the last 20 plus years. And apart from that, there's also extensive 25 plus years in the Middle East. The last 7 years or so, there's been a focus also on blockchain. And as you know, there's a lot of ongoing projects associated with this across the Middle East. 2 projects at least worth mentioning. One is, of course, the city of Dubai. Most people think it's a country, but it's not a country. It's a province in a state in which they have blockchain as a strategy for the whole government, but not just blockchain. They appointed the first AI minister about a year and a half ago. And the more recent, although it's a rehash of an old project, is a city called Neom in Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea, which is trying to mimic what Dubai is in the Saudi context, and will probably be a city 10 times bigger than Dubai, at least by a factor. So this kind of frameworks will provide an extensive background and experience. Sorry, I didn't turn on the video there. There it is. Oops, I'll put the other way around. I think I'm upside down. Oh boy. Eventually.
But so for those who are wondering, sorry, George, I don't want to cut you off, but thank you. And yeah, if you want to finish off your thoughts, please. But I wanted to.
No, apart from that, we have, of course, many projects, but I also invited to the meeting today some people from Greece and from Europe, because obviously we have a big interest in XR applications to be part of European Union new budget. So we have people like Emmanuel from Greece and some of his partners that are on the call today as well.
Excellent. So we are allowing, let's say, from now to Monday. So take your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Please take these 2 documents and indicate, and we're going to open that up so that you can comment as well as just type in, indicate your focus areas or your particular thing by the end of Sunday. And so Monday, we can start sending out these sprint meeting invites and then all the other resources. We'll try to send out all these recording and resources as soon as possible. Then you have the entire weekend to think through what are the areas that you want to be part of. If there are areas that are specifically lacking or missing, such as like the blockchain emphasis or BCI or something, then you can actually add to the end of it and indicate that that's the area that is lacking, highlight it in certain color, name your name, specifically provide your email address, just so we know who to actually add to those particular documentations. And then also indicate if you want to be a lead of any of these focus areas. Currently, we have at least 5-6 assignments already, but be rest assured there is more and more work needed. So there's not going to be a problem if you want to claim leadership in any of these groups.
I have a question.
Oh, there's Ken. Oh, you
hello.
made it. Hey.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was listening in. So I guess after listening to the sort of digest of the 1.0 version, one of my feedback was that, there's so many different contexts, and Helen Niesenbaum's contextual integrity approach to privacy does reveal how much context is so important. So information that you may be giving to a doctor in a medical context is different than, say, an education context. And so I'm glad to see that there's at least one breakout group for higher education, because I think there could be a lot of benefit to actually focusing in on a very specific context, and because it becomes overwhelming if you try to encompass every single aspect, because some of these things are not going to be relevant for certain contexts. So I'm wondering what your approach is going to be for breaking out those different contexts, whether it's medical, education, enterprise, entertainment, finance, there's lots of different ways that you could, break this out. So just curious what your strategy for this is going to be.
Right. So that's a really, really good question. And in fact, if Menti allowed us to ask 3 questions for free and not have to pay $119, we probably would have asked this question, because I believe we definitely want to break it out to higher ed. Already University of Michigan and other universities are working on. So that's definitely a given. This is definitely going to be a specific use case they'll tackle. There's another use case that we are prioritizing, which is medical XR. So medical use case. So those 2 are given, but I think given the time crunch and given this, those are the 2 use cases we're able to handle at the moment. But do you guys think that another use case should be a priority? Because those 2 we believe are real priority at the moment.
I mean, the other big one is entertainment. That's basically everybody else. It's just making consumer apps.
Right. Well, you're right, Kent, and entertainment is, but if I think about entertainment and try to sort of put some compliance and security guidelines, it is very unlikely. I've tried to make contact with Wave or Tribe or all these people. So at an organizational level, the entertainment entities are still just at the baby steps. So if we demonstrate this for these 2 key, the very a receptive domains, then we may be able to do a iteration for entertainment. So we had this entertainment specific discussion. And I believe that if we do this quarter 2 of these, and then we can regroup and then prioritize the 3rd one. But you're absolutely right. This is a massive one. Unfortunately, because there would be much less receptivity, that's why entertainment was kind of deprioritized.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
There's something I can add here also as well that is probably quite useful. If we look at the example of the cybersecurity standard 27001, we have one where is the code of practice and the other one is the controls. And in the second one, you have the best practices and you can add specific ones to almost anything in the future. So the controls can remain pretty much the same, but then you have application of the controls in a business context. And you can keep adding further into the future without any trouble.
Right. So like a more agile, iterative versioning of these things. Another information that I believe is useful to mention is we are reaching out, we are in conversation with entities like ul.com. I'm not sure if Handa is here, but the idea is to either, and also in BCI, which is the ISO folks, we're not in conversation with Etsy, but we are going to. So if you feel that these type of entities should partner with us and we should talk to them, that's great. But we're already talking to a couple of them. So they may potentially become, depends on how the conversation goes, for the vehicle for adoption and enforcement. So following this, there is a parallel effort that's going on to create ratings and all of this stuff. So we will provide this sort of a badging or rating kind of system. It's all in the air, depends on how the conversations go, but there is a heavy interest from UL, as well as recently BCI had contacted from the UK side. So we'll see how this goes. And hopefully we might be able to give to the XR industry a badge or a rating system, which is more like a, like a tool that somebody can log into and create an assessment and get some ratings and be encouraged to get a better rating based on their privacy and safety security mechanisms. And there are tons of questions here. So I believe we can continue asking Q&A. If you want to unmute yourself, go for it. Maybe
hey, Kavya, it's Mookie. Hi.
Hey, Mookie.
Hi, guys. I'm just going to echo, I think, someone named Ben Sachs. Hello, Ben. And bring up this issue of public spaces, which so forgive me if I missed it in the spreadsheet, if it's somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. Use of XR within public spaces has been brought up time and time again, the last about 18 months, to a couple years. And I just put a link in the chat with reference to some of those issues. So can you let us know, is that in the spreadsheet? Is that something that is also being explored as a track to investigate and contribute to?
I'm gonna, so if you, sorry, Mickey, I just sort of missed
Cool.
that.
Sorry if I missed it, if it's in there already.
What specific, if you could tell me specific, so inward activities, is that what you're saying?
I can jump in a little bit on that. That's because I kind of brought it up.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Ben. Hi.
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with, augmented reality and say like museum contexts or public parks and things like that. And so when you start to think about what does it mean to have, cameras and sensors in those spaces and people's privacy, how do we afford people the correct type of privacy when they might not even know their cameras being used for that? So I think, and obviously when you're in a private space, that's more of an issue of how is Facebook scanning all the items in my home and what are they looking for? When you're in a public space, it's how am I being scanned, even if I'm not aware of it. So I think there's kind of issues of surveillance that come into play.
Yeah, that's it. You took it out of my head. Thank you.
Yeah.
Working with AR. Yeah.
It seems to me you're talking about something that we mulled over in the last version is the geo-privacy, and Marco Tillman from here has left already, but he is one of the folks, and then there is Steve Peters, one of our advisors. So what I'm talking about is DNS and DNA. So do not scan and do not augment. There needs to be a decentralized registry mechanism, kind of like, DNS basically, where you can, Apple, Facebook, anybody can sort of register, or individuals can register that, hey, this is my private space, do not. And perhaps even a local mechanism for everyone to say, this is my living room and this is the bedroom, create those geo boundaries. But those technical mechanisms have to be supplemented with a global government type body, so you can inform to the police. So for example, today at the White House, Nancy Baker Cahill has put some artwork. It says GTFO and all the COVID numbers are running. But imagine the president of the United States and the entire army that behind it, they don't know that there is, they don't know how to tackle that or to break that down. So these kinds of things, first is awareness, but there is a global entity. And I think we are well positioned to create something like that and then help with that. And of course, we need technical expertise and development work. And that's why, we need some of the donations to be able to commence those development work. But the path is very clear, is we need a global entity that would act like a DNS, like a do not scan and do not augment list. And then that has to be a global registry. Perhaps there are other open entities, open source developments that are going on. And if there are, please indicate to us, and that's very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, one quick challenge I see with that though is you're kind of having an opt-out versus opt-in type of approach in that way. And so you have a lot of people that might not even be aware of this, that you'd have to somehow educate them first to get them to opt out. So I think there's also kind of a regulatory aspect that plays into this, because when you think about things like, Google Street View, they intentionally blur out all the faces as they scan. And that seems like kind of a policy initiative that helps ensure privacy. So it might be those types of approaches that we have to think about too.
Definitely.
If I may,
by developer basis as well and project, but especially with the public spaces. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
If I may, speaking from an attacker perspective, if you told me not to scan something, that's the first place I'd look. I think that should be remembered when creating a system like that.
Yeah, I want to jump off that. This is John. What Peter just said. Unfortunately, as well, even if you set up something, what we've seen over the last 20 years is that you get a data source and then you can analyze it later in a more effective way. So like some of the security research where, oh yeah, you sent that through SSL. Great, let me look at how big all the pieces are and and I can reverse engineer what's inside it. So I'm wondering where's the discourse around like obfuscation by design type of stuff, where like from my perspective, some of the manufacturers and other people are gonna have to sell their hardware software as we are destroying sensors, or we are like, maybe not literally, but like actively, like my pair of glasses I'll wear in the year 2037 or whatever will like constantly shoot counter LiDAR, right? Or like counter these things. And like there will actually be a genuine I don't want to use the phrase battle space, but I'm just going to kind of pull forth some of the DoD's language of signal dominance, because a lot of what we're talking about is commercialization of technology that the US military is already deploying, and Israel and other groups, where they go into an airspace and basically dominate that airspace so that no one can perceive anything, or otherwise modulate the airspace electromagnetically. So the direct application of focused electromagnetic interference is going to be part of this technology, especially with haptics, right? Like touchless haptics is a door opener for like, I can manipulate objects using energy. So I just, you know, this is, I know it's very futuristic, but I love the framework that we're trying to lay down here is like, how do you get to Rainbow's End where you do have privacy in your bedroom, you do have, you know, et cetera. But I just want to make it aware that we've seen the failure of the do not track type of approach, where because it is opt-in, and like, you know, Peter on the attacker perspective is I think accurate in the sense of, you know, only the good guys will follow the law. So then the law, you know, will be set aside. So I just want to bring up like maybe, you know, I don't know who's in here that is actually part of like signals dominance in the military space, DoD space, but we may want to try and bring some of those folks in to actually start really like realistically look at, you know, what is the electromagnetic spectrum around these devices going to look like? That will also help address some of the concerns about 5G and stuff that are starting to conspiracy theory bubble up that's impacting my industry of health. So yeah.
That's a good recommendation. There is actually a person, I only remember his alias because I only met him in war most of the times, Captain America. He's with Texas Instruments and doing these very similar projects, all the way to helping out Space Force with the you know, EMP type of adversarial phenomenon that are already observed in the space. So maybe I will contact him. Another question I was thinking, what do you think about FAA? And this was just on my mind, like FAA kind of regulates the airspace type of thing. Maybe they need to know that this is also, and maybe they already know and already are doing something about it.
I mean, I have a little bit of, I'm starting to touch drones a little bit more because drones are becoming a medical first response item. That convergence is important. So like, I think Microsoft released Azure Spatial Anchor, and they did the spot robot walks to the point set in space. So we at Avatar Medic are, hopefully, if NIST gives us the grant, going to do a secure version of remote field, like identifying where someone is, showing where the, you know, the waypoint, and then transmitting information back and forth. It's an interesting convergence that's going to come, especially if we consider that 5G is so limited in terms of distance that there might end up being invisible signal repeater drones that end up being part of our infrastructure. So this is, I think, what I mean by like the practical physical reality of this infrastructure is going to be something I think we'll want to focus on, in addition to the more conceptual or legal frameworks of like physically how would you stop adversarial or otherwise bad behavior. I don't want it to turn into a battle space, but unfortunately with humans, things tend to do that.
And Kavya, I'll add just really quickly. I'm familiar with some of the work that FAA is doing right now, receiving industry feedback for urban air mobility, so UAM and AAM. So they're currently right now just researching the heck out of how airports and local municipalities will be doing handoff for UAM and AAM. So that may be of interest to them, the security insights.
One comment I wanted to make, going back to the last thing that Kavya said, is if everybody could take a look at what Apple just did in terms of their privacy nutrition labels as a model for consumer-facing awareness, because it gives a very sort of simple breakdown that consumers can understand in terms of what sort of data is being collected and how it's being used. And this, of course, is one of the things that's triggering the WhatsApp controversy this week, and everybody's moving over to Signal because now everybody's aware exactly what WhatsApp is intending to do. And it took this long for us to get this for smartphones. We shouldn't take this long for consumers to be able to have this type of information about XR as the adoption continues.
And I feel the need to point something else out as well. With regards specifically to countermeasures, anything on the RF spectrum that emits has to go through an FCC certification. So with anything we would do, say hacky, in order to get rid of some of that stuff, we could easily run afoul of laws for things like not broadcasting on certain bands. We have to take that into consideration as well when developing these kind of countermeasures, as well as the fact that over time, if some of these things cross into the field of, say, IR or some form of visual, that could also lead to new regulations as well that could cause issues there as well.
It's also worth bringing up a little bit about, I mean, we talk about 5G and access to the greater internet, but I think also as decentralization starts to happen more and more, we're also going to have to think about what does it mean to have edge compute and local servers providing ground truths via mesh networks and things like that. And who has the authority over those types of spaces and where are those physical installations happening?
Can I ask a brief, just yes or no question? I really appreciate the effort here. This is encouraging for the future, but is there any application of homomorphic encryption throughout any of this stack already planned? I don't see it in any of the documents or anything. I hear all this prevention of attacks and RF related discussion. That's all great, that's secondary, but if homomorphic encryption is not in this framework, then this is an interesting exercise that will not reform the platforms. So I'm yes or no, is this part of the framework?
Dylan, this is specifically why I reached out to you, because we need some insight on that part, and we were not able to have that proactive, privacy preserving technology usage and that type of discussion, and it's still not a part of 1.0. So okay. Thank you for being here, because yeah, you definitely need to guide us on that a little bit.
Can I ask a broader question related to these, let's say, related technologies? Is your intent with this framework to have it all encompassing, so all of the related and important technologies in there, or do you expect to connect to existing standardization efforts, frameworks that are being worked on, technologies that are being worked on, and make sure that the concerns that you capture in your framework actually land at the appropriate places in those frameworks? For example, 5G, it needs to be part of their privacy items in 3GPP, SA3, for example. When it comes to homomorphic encryption, multi-party computation, you want to have it in the appropriate places there. What is your perspective on this?
So far, we're observing just 3 technologies closely: BCI, 5G, and AI. Those are the cross sections that are like actively being observed, and I anticipate that multi-sensory and other aspects. But I think Dennis, if you want to chime in, what other technology cross sections we would be observing? We would never go in and say, hey, 5G guys, you need to do it this way. But we would definitely, what we anticipate is what is the impact of 5G on XR, and then make the recommendation for the XR space is what, at least my assessment. But Dennis, you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking similarly about it. And I think part of this kickoff and part of this initiative really is to continue iterating on what we've been able to capture thus far. So we know that there are gaps, and the point of having 95 people on this call really is to point out what the continued gaps are and try to close them. And so we know this is not going to be an end all. We are trying to reach out to other organizations like IEEE, and I think somebody mentioned ANSI. And so the idea here is, are there other initiatives that can either fold into this or we fold into that, or can we use the terminology and the jargon that they're going to understand so that they can adopt portions of or all of this particular framework?
Yeah, it's intended to be very collaborative. And that's why BCI, any organizations that are developing standard. One last thing I want to mention is we are curating a knowledge base that you will all have access to. So any relevant information, article, anything that you guys have, you can send it to Will or myself or all of us. And then once we start meeting regularly, of course, we will keep adding those to our knowledge base that everyone should have and will have access to. Lastly, if people are in favor of a signal group, you can go to reaction and give a thumbs up because we feel that that would allow us to just a seamless coordination. Like, hey, I got, for me, it's a thumbs up. Like, I would really love to have a Signal group chat going on. Like, so we have like regular meetings and all of that. It seems like most people kind of want to have that. So we'll send a group link, part of the delivery package of all of these things that we just talked about.
Yeah, and thank you again, all of you, for your time. I know that we're right there at the hour mark. We will follow up with links and emails. This was pretty fast and furious. There were a ton of people on the call. We just wanted to make sure that we did this kickoff so we could start the momentum, and we'll figure out ways to collaborate and congeal all of this insight that we know that we've all got as a community. So Kavya, I think next steps for us is really kind of to reach out back to everyone with an opportunity to put their names into the document, and then we'll start to divvy up, those responsibilities.
Yep. So thank you all, and we'll be reaching out and sharing all these stuff and documentation. Any questions? You're welcome to email us.
Cool. Thanks everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.